So thanks again for joining us in this session of our conversation with Gary and Wilma Davidson, where we're looking at their life of ministry over a 38-year period in Ireland and trying to learn from what they've experienced and the principles they've put into place over the years. Today, we're talking about the call of God. What is it that lets us know that we've heard something from God? How can we authenticate that call? How do we hear it? How can we be sure that God is calling us to something? So stay with us and we'll talk this through with Gary and Wilma. Don't forget to subscribe because you will get notices then of when the next session comes out. Gary and Wilma, thanks again for continuing this conversation. It's lovely always, and I can't help saying thank you for your 38 years of ministry in Ireland and the lives that have been impacted by that, and will continue to be for many years to come. Today, though, we're going to talk about the call of God in your lives, and how all of us can learn the principles of how do we know we're hearing from God? Are they audible voices? Is there writing on a wall? Does somebody have to come? Does a prophet have to come and tell us something? What is it that helps us to know that we've heard from God, that we can step out with assurance into the ministry that God has called us to? All Christians are called to serve in one way or another. There's ministry there for all of us. And that's a wonderful thing that we can all be involved in. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to serve in what God is doing. But for those who feel a call of God to dedicate their lives full time to ministry, because that is a special call, I would say, how can you sense and verify that call?
First of all, the scripture says, Jesus said to pray to the Lord of the harvest, he would send forth laborers in the field. So it's essential that we pray for individuals to be called to the work of the harvest. And I think P.J. Booth is an example of that. He prayed and prayed and prayed for somebody to be called to Newbridge to raise up what is now Open Arms. And one day realized he was the one to do it. So I think sometimes we're praying the Lord of the harvest, send forth laborers, when actually we're the ones that God is calling. So I think, first of all, it's an obedience to the scriptures. What does the scripture say? And then our own set of circumstance can kind of manage us. I think the one reason we're in Ireland is because I was born in England, always carried a burden for that part of the world, and kind of my life shaped me to end up there. And I actually prayed that I'd go to England, and the Lord didn't open the door. And when I study the lives of the great missionaries of the past, many of them ended up exactly in another, not exactly where they were going, but in another place because of circumstance. And so England, when I approached AGWM, was not even on their radar, but possibly Ireland was. And of course, we ended up there. And I can't imagine myself ministering as effectively in England as I have in Ireland by God's grace. And then I think we sense in our spirit what God is saying. But I think there has to come confirmation. And we've talked about that. A letter came in my life that confirmed the call and to Ireland. Wilma had sensed that we would end up overseas, not knowing it would be Ireland. But then the affirmation that came from those that I was in submission to that confirmed that call. And even prophetically, people spoke over our lives about the call. I think there were so many things happened that we ended up in Ireland, but it happened over it was years in preparation. But the time we actually began to consider Ireland till we'd put our feet on the ground there, it was 2.5 years.
And maybe one perspective, one angle to question on this would be, there's very often times I feel prompted to do something for a friend or to do something for my wife, to do something for that the Lord might just put something on my mind that I say, oh, you know, it'd be real. Yes, I should do that. But I do sense it was something that the Lord just dropped in, and it's very easy to act on that. And we don't need probably to do a whole pile of verification and spend a huge amount of time in prayer and consideration. But when something significant happens, like a change in our life's direction or some significant decision, um, it's very rarely, I think what you're saying is that it'll be one event
Oh
that
yeah. Oh no.
that sets that direction for us.
Yeah, I shared in one of the sessions about how the Lord spoke to me, and I submitted and prayed and gave my mothers and my country and everything to the Lord. But one of the things that caused me to do that was a song that a girl sang often, and part of the song was, "Here I go again, I'm such a crybaby." Men are dying, souls are crying, win the lost at any cost. And I knew, the Lord was calling us, and I knew it was going to be a cost.
Yes.
And that night, when it was a cost to leave a family.
Yeah.
And when we have, one of Gary's jobs is to interview young missionaries that are feeling the call, and we kind of do everything we can to discourage them.
Okay.
Not literally,
Yes.
but we question, because you've got to have that calling. You've got to. You are making a sacrifice.
Yes.
And there's that old saying, "Oh, absence makes the heart grow fonder." That's not a true statement, because often absence causes space and distance, even in families.
Yes.
And especially when we first went on the field, we didn't have the cell phones and the free. My goodness, we can't hardly believe that we can talk to our grandkids and see them on FaceTime, and it doesn't cost us anything.
Yes.
Because those first few years, what did it cost us to make a phone
over
call?
$1 a minute just to make a phone call. Yeah.
So we didn't make many phone calls, and it was hard to keep relationships in that. But just to say, I think the calling will be confirmed by several different ways. The Lord may speak to you through a song,
Yes.
or through somebody preaching a message the night that this missionary from Africa, Gary, said he heard preach, and he lay crying for
an hour.
For an hour afterwards, the heartbroken for. I mean, when we think about it, we have a church on nearly every corner in America.
Yes.
But there are so many countries that there are so many tribes of people that still haven't heard the gospel.
Yeah. And that huge mission field is still there. And there's an endless need for people to answer that call, isn't it, to respond. But I think the point has been well made by both of you, really, is that, a significant call into a significant lifelong work requires confirmation.
Yes.
It's not a single event. It's something to be considered
You're probably
prayerfully.
not going to be Saul of Tarsus and be knocked off your horse. And
Yes, that would
bright
be
lights
unusual.
and
Yeah. Like, we understand that Abraham that heard from God and made an incredible commitment, but not everybody's Abraham.
No, that's right.
And it's more common that we will have mentors, we'll have advisors, we'll have people in authority around us, we'll have godly men and women who will be praying for us and thinking for us, who we should consult.
Yes.
And submit our thoughts to. That's kind of what I'm sensing from you.
yes.
Is that correct?
Yes. One of my roles now as a mission elder here in Oklahoma is to vet individuals.
Okay.
And so when they sit before me, I often will say, "Tell me what you've done." Because if you're going to go to another culture, learn another language, and raise up a church, and you can't do it in your own culture.
Yes.
Now, some disagree with me. That's fine.
Yeah.
But we've all seen that not happen in Ireland, where individuals that were unable to raise up a church in another in their own home culture come, and they weren't successful there.
Yes.
So I think there has to be a bit of a track record
Okay.
in the early years of missions, unless you serve for at least 2 years. And our friend the other day, the McGee's, referred to that as a pastor. And now that's no longer a criteria, and I think that can be both.
Yes.
It can be very good because sometimes individuals are called specifically, and there's very different ministries. And there used to be you just went out and preached,
Yes.
and now we know we have people that emphasize media, whatever, and are very gifted and very much needed because there's different ways of touching people's lives.
One of the principles I think that we used at St. Mark's was, somebody coming into the church who wanted to go on stage for some. When I say on
Yeah.
stage, I mean
Yeah.
up in front, because we didn't necessarily have a stage, but up front, and it could have been in worship, it could have been in praying, it could have been in all sorts of expressions of what that would have been. But we would have required them to be in the church for a period of time,
Yeah.
to be under the ministry of the church there before they could assume some sort of public thing. And there's this same principle here stirring in my mind, is that, look, the church in Ireland, there's huge scope for it to grow further, but it is doing well. There's over
Yes.
50 churches planted now.
Yes.
There is ample opportunity for somebody, if you feel the call of God, to get in with somebody,
Yes.
to start helping them, assisting them, to learn ministry, to learn how to minister before you go out on your own.
Yes.
And there's something in me that thinks, if you're not prepared to do that, I'm not sure you're qualified to go out and do it on your own. Now, you please just tell me I'm wrong on that one, but I'd love to discuss that one.
It's interesting. Just look at some notes here. They're talking about what to look for in a potential leader,
Okay.
and mentoring is God's plan to raise up a new generation of leaders. But I have here character traits that we should recognize in an emerging leader, and the first one is: do they come with a servant's heart? And because you can trust a servant, like Jesus emphasized the fact. Not even sure we can trust people to be teachers or whatever, but you can trust a servant,
Yes.
someone that's willing to wash the feet of others. And I've used it many times, the old proverb, the way up is the way down.
Yes.
Jesus said, wasn't it?
Huh?
It's what Jesus said.
Yes, so I've always said we serve our way up
Yes.
because you can trust a servant. You can trust a individual with a towel and a basin. And the humble person doesn't think less of themselves. They only think of themselves less.
Right. I love that. That's
Yeah.
really good.
And so the first thing I always watched and I remember Noel Mack was very good on Noel McFarland, our elder's elder. He would say about some of the young fellas coming in, watch the quiet ones.
Okay.
They just stay busy and work, and you nearly have to persuade them to get on the platform.
Yes.
It's the ones that are knocking everybody down to climb up there. You don't want them up there. And with that expectation, how do they serve?
Yes.
Because it's always going to be about serving.
And that's a key thing to watch, and obviously is on your list of
Yeah.
things that you're looking for in new people coming to serve. So I think that's a strong one. Yeah. So confirmation from several sources
Yes.
that the call is real,
Yes.
and a willingness to serve others, to
Yes,
serve your way
absolutely.
up into ministry, so to speak.
Yeah. And their track record for, someone has said integrity is not the main thing, it's the only thing.
Yes.
And character. And so, what is their track record when an individual sits before them? Because you and I remember a session that we were conducting, you were chairing, and somebody felt they had a word, we were to give them a large property. And I remember you said, well, unless the Lord sits here and we all hear him, how are we going to discern what God is saying? Because we're sensing something different. So it comes down to the early church. We need to hear from God, and seemeth good to us and the Holy Spirit that we're here together. But does a person have integrity? Do they walk circumspectly before the Lord? And do they have the respect of their peers and workmates? You know?
And which reminds me of the scripture where Paul is writing to Timothy. I think it is on the qualification for elders, and
Yes.
say they must be that they must be of good esteem both inside and outside
the church, yes.
So that all of those things need to be in place.
Yes.
And actually, it's only others who can actually verify that
Yes.
that's true. We may think we're in that position ourselves, but unless others are verifying it, question marks remain.
Yes.
Yeah.
When we do, when individuals fill out application here, apply for credentials as a minister, they have about 5 references they need. And it's not only going to be their pastor, it's going to be one of their workmates and one of their employers.
Okay. Yeah.
So we, so, well, they don't know the Lord. Well, we want to hear from them. We want to hear what they think, you know.
Of what
and all of that is taken in
yeah.
As we make a decision, should you pursue this role?
Wilma, you've spoken about that call, that you've always felt that there was a need to get in there, roll your sleeves up, and see many people who are lost being saved. Your decision together to respond to a call of God. So we can hear it as individuals, and that can be affirmed by others. But in your case, then you're called to come to Ireland. How did you jointly come to understand that? I think you spoke about that you had known something about this for a couple of years before Gary said anything.
Well, because he had, yes, I said that, because he had had a heart for missions every time a missionary would come. So when he came to me and said he'd gotten this letter and he felt there was an opening in Ireland, that's where we're going to go, it was just automatically. I trusted him and trusted God had spoke to him, and I was ready to, wherever thou goest, I will go. Your people will be my people. Irish people. You guys have often said to him, you're more Irish than the Irish.
Yes. Well, he certainly drinks more tea than most Irish people. But the other thing I'd say is that or ask the question really in how important is it for both spouses in a marriage to be in sync with the direction that God is bringing you?
I think our experience has taught us,
and our observation of
and
people,
our observation of others have taught us that if they're not in sync, they really shouldn't.
I think we've had 2 instances in Ireland where we've had couples come, and both of them, one of them definitely, it was the woman that felt the call, and he kind of come along, and it wasn't successful.
Didn't work.
And the other one, the man really had the call, but she didn't.
Right.
Yeah.
And
so
they didn't.
It didn't work. They didn't stay, and even their marriages failed. Both of them, their marriages failed when they came back to America.
So I just think, well, I would know at least 3 cases like that. I mean, Joe, when you do a study of missionaries, most missionaries that don't make it to their first term, it is because of conflict in their home, their marriage, or conflict with other missionary colleagues. You know, so I always say, well, they go over and they encounter spiritual warfare and demonic forces and so on. And the culture, in the majority of the cases, it's because of conflict between either within the family or with the other missionary colleagues, not with the individual, not with the people they're trying to reach, which also says there were probably issues, but you throw a person in a new culture, all these things come to the surface, you know.
Stress points show up.
Yeah, the stress point. I mean, for instance, if you really struggle with impatience and you end up in some of the African villages or the African culture where they just take their time. Your mail is there. You go down to get it. You can see your post is there. Oh, well, you can have it tomorrow. No, it's there now. But their culture is, no, you come tomorrow and get it. And I remember a friend of mine saying that this English doctor, missionary, great guy, but he had some medical things. They were there. He went, he said, I've come to get it. And of course, the guy was wanting a little money. And he said, well, you can get it tomorrow. And he could see it. And he got angry and stormed out. My friend followed him and he says to the individual serving, he said, I guess he doesn't realize how important you are. And the guy laughs. He says, what do you want? And he gives it to him. But the impatience the individual always had, the stress brought it to the surface. The storm revealed the fact that the house built on the sand didn't have a good foundation. They looked the same until the stress and the storm came. And so if your marriage is a bit fragile, and I think sometimes people think, well, I'll go overseas and everything will be great. No, it's going to get worse.
Gets worse.
Yeah.
And I think, we're not trying to do marriage counseling now, so we won't go into that. But the key thing is that really both partners need to be in sync.
They got to be in sync.
Need to know the call.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they need to know, I say, 110%, because of the call. That first 2 years is all that kept me in Ireland. It wasn't your handsome face.
Oh.
Yes, I know you're devastated by that.
You tell me now after all these years.
Well, I knew you could take it now because you dealt with it.
Tell your story about beating the steering wheel. In the 80s, we went there in May 1980, and almost immediately, there was a postal strike. There was a train strike. We had to take the children to school. They couldn't take the train. There was a bus strike. There was a petrol strike. He's got a great story about going at 4 o'clock in the morning with a huge thermos of tea and waiting until the station.
You get served at 8 o'clock. But I do remember being at Cornell's Court after about a year and a half, and I suddenly was overcome with frustration. And I remember saying to the Lord, why did you bring me here? I left a good church, people that love me, to come over here. And every time I open my mouth, they say, you sound just like J.R. Ewing from Dallas. You remember Dallas, do you? Yeah. And but I remember saying, Lord, I committed for 4 years, but in 4 years, I'm out of here. That was 44 years ago. Yeah.
You just forget to leave or something?
Yeah, that's right.
It'll be 45 years in May.
It will be May the 9th.
Incredible.
But the call kept me, and also the commitment. Yes. I made a commitment, and I signed a commitment I would give 4 years. And I thought, when the 4 years over, I'm going. And it interested me. We came back. We fundraised, got the children. Christy got into university and all of that. But just as we're getting ready to go back, in 85, we had this offer for this great church. Great church, not far from here. And I remember saying to Wilma, you have to help make this decision because we're leaving our daughter. And it was a tough time to leave her. When I went back to Ireland, the church that we had been with had decided they didn't need us. So, you look back and you think, I could have taken this, but I knew God had called me. So the call sustains.
And somebody could have argued that was actually God telling you, through circumstances, that certain things had changed and you went back to the States because you had a great job offer and the church said they didn't need you anymore. Well, surely that's the Lord telling me I can go.
Oh, yeah.
But you still felt that call.
And the guy that called me, the guy with a real prophetic ministry that I would really trust, but I also knew he was leaving and he was desperate, the right kind of person that understood what was happening in that church, which I did, and because I'd been there. And I think he, in his desperation, saying that Gary would be a great fit. He talked to his church, everybody agreed, but it was not. We never had peace about it. We didn't really have to pray about it. But God, when I got the call, I remember hanging the phone up. Wilma said, this pastor called you. Would you call him? That was when we didn't have cell phones. She knew what hotel I'd be in. And when I hung the phone up, I felt the Lord say, he's going to ask you to take his church. And it was, you know how you have that conversation and the Lord speaks and then you respond?
Yes.
And I said, what should I do? And I never heard anything. But it was, when I look back now, and I've actually been there, some of the people would know, but most of them have no idea. And I think, yeah, the call kept me.
Yeah. That kind of leads us into something I know we've spoken about a little bit, but two words that are often used in association with ministry, and that is burden and vision. Um, I think we've all read the leadership books that where vision is probably held as the most important thing to get clear, and that great leaders have a great sense of vision. And I think you need that vision in terms of bringing a team together so they know where you're going, that they know what everybody is trying to do together. But sometimes I kind of wonder about what is the fuel that lights the fire for us to enable us to pursue vision. And I think in Christian ministry, it's probably the burden that God puts on us. If we don't have that burden, we can play around with vision, but you won't have the longevity, you won't have the commitment over a period of time to stick to that. Would you talk to us about your sense of the difference between burden and vision, and which comes first, and what is the relative importance of both?
I think Nehemiah gives us the finest example of that. He was serving as a cupbearer and in the Artaxerxes, and actually living in captivity, basically, the people of Israel. And he got a burden. He heard the story of the walls being down and the temple not being rebuilt in Jerusalem, and he got a burden for it. And once he got that burden and prayed, then God began to give him a vision to rebuild the walls. So, and William Booth says it very well. William Booth made this statement, to the founder of the Salvation Army. He said, since I got a burden for the people of London and a vision of what God could do, my life has never been the same. But the burden came for the vision, and the burden for Ireland came before the vision. I can still see myself in that second building we built in southeast Oklahoma, in Hayworth, Oklahoma, the first assembly there. I can still see myself pacing in front of the church the wee hours of the morning, praying for the people of Ireland.
Wow.
I had a burden for the people of Ireland. I didn't have a vision. I didn't know what God was going to do, except I had a burden for them.
Yes.
And I'm praying, and I look back and I think, without realizing, I was praying for the Seans and the Joes and the Marys and the Kyles, all the different ones I was praying for. But I until I got a vision of what God could do. So I think on our knees, the burden drives us to our knees. Vision causes us to get up from our knees, begin to implement the instruction, the strategies that have been born on our knees. Okay, it was on his knees that Nehemiah got a vision to build the walls, but then he had to start following through on how he implements that strategy.
I'm just thinking now of the power of prayer ministry, and we've spoken about the power of prayer and where that's at. And prayer ministry, especially intercessory prayer, is probably nearly always driven by burden, isn't it? It's always driven by something that God puts on us as a crying out from our hearts to see a people or a portion of the world impacted by change that God can bring. So that ties in very well with your description of the burden that we get. It brings us to our knees. And I love that idea about you rise up then into an act, fulfilling vision out of a burden. There is a sense sometimes we can spend a lot of time talking about stuff and never actually acting out on it. But there is a call out of the burden that God has given us when He gives us the vision to get out and act. And that's what you guys did when you got on that plane and came to Ireland?
Well, you can't pray and stay all day. I mean, there has to be that moment that you don't just pray and stay, that moment you rise up. And we've all known, and we've seen over the years, small groups that are very insular. And I've watched them, they'll pray, they'll fast, they'll prophesy over each other, and they do the same thing the next week and the same thing the next week. And somebody says, well, are you being critical? I'm not critical of the prayer. I can't believe that we can just pray and stay. We've got to implement what God has put in our hearts. Nehemiah had to intercede with the king and make the journey to Jerusalem to fulfill the vision. We had to make that journey to Ireland, and our vision. Our vision probably grew out of after we arrived in Ireland. We weren't sure what we were going to do.
When we were doing our orientation, I
Yes.
think I mentioned that we had to read this book by Dr.
Yeah,
Melvin
yeah.
Hodge. So we did have a vision. We were pastors at heart,
Right.
and his vision was that you go to a country and you raise up a church
Okay.
and you turn it over to the people there. And so that wasn't
Yeah, it was our vision.
Yes.
I mean,
What
we
was
were a
it you
bit
always
different
said? We came here to work.
ourselves out of a job.
Right.
Yeah.
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 So there was that sense of you had a vision, but actually that vision would have been useless if you didn't have the burden for Ireland.
Oh,
Yeah.
the
No, we
burden,
had the burden first, and
yeah.
then the vision.
vision grew
This is
out of
what
the
we're-
burden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it was very clear that this was something that you were going to do because of the focus that you had on the indigenous church, was to plant a church that would become entirely indigenous. And that's exactly what happened.
More than what we ever dreamed of. We thought maybe one church, but now
Yeah.
look what God did.
Quite amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To God be the glory.
So if we look at some of those principles, then, the call of God, the affirmation by others, the having more than one indicator to let us know that God's speaking to us. So we have many ways of knowing, and the affirmation of others. The sense of burden that God puts on us, and then coming out of that prayerfully handling and working through that burden, that sense of vision that comes out, acting on the vision. But acting on a vision requires us to have, and even praying about the burden requires us to have a geography in mind, a location.
Yeah.
How did you've spoken about pacing across the church and praying for the people of Ireland, but we know you grew up in England, and you also prayed for England, and Ireland hadn't been on your mind. When did you start getting that sense of that God was bringing you to a particular location, and how is that location identified? And then even within Ireland, how did you identify you started to work in the city centre of Dublin? How did that sense of location come about?
Well, I didn't know it was Ireland when I first had the burden to pray for Europe and prayed a lot for India. In fact, I mean, we went to Calcutta. I thought I walked these streets before. So, and I say that to young missionaries, missionary applicants, you need to walk the place in the spirit before you walk it physically. And so whenever I received this letter from my friend saying there might be an opportunity to begin a teen challenge ministry in the south of Ireland, and then on top of that, after I made application, I was told that probably wouldn't happen. But after I made application, then Pastor Bob Egger at Bethlehem Tabernacle on Shankill Road in Belfast had actually requested for missionaries to come, and there was my application. Then that was such a confirmation to all of us that it was going to be Ireland. And then when we arrived, I was reading a lot of books on new missionology, new vision for missionaries, being more missional, and that there was such a shift, especially after World War I, from the rural to the urban. So you had these exploding cities, and that's where the people were. So you go where the people are. So 1.1 million or so are in Dublin. So that's where we start. And And Ireland being a small country, a third the size of Oklahoma, everything kind of circulates through Dublin. So kind of whatever happens. Because I remember I have talked to people over the years that have churches going now, and I would say to them, how'd you get a vision of this church? And said, we remember in the early years that once a month we would drive to Dublin because there was that conference called St. Mark's Church.
Okay.
And they were used to 12 or 15 in a prayer group. They would come and there'd be 400 people worshiping. And they said that was our shot in the arm. And remember the lady who used to drive from Wexford in an old banger of a car, used to pray with her, and she asked the Lord for a church like St. Mark's, and that's the church at Wexford.
Yes.
I've thought what we had a vision to do, it was bigger than us and as big as the country, because people come and saw it in Dublin and they said, can we have that here?
Yes.
And I remember when we dedicated the building there, she said, I asked the Lord for a St. Mark's in Wexford.
Wow. And it happened.
And it
And it
happened.
happened.
So the geographical location was strategic because it said to the whole nation.
I'm sure what happened with you was you felt this burden, you felt the call of God, and then the next week you were on the plane to Ireland. Is that the way it happened?
Well, I couldn't get tickets that first week, so and the Queen Mary wasn't selling.
So it took over 2
It had
years.
birth in Long Beach, yeah.
But there is that sense of timing.
Yeah,
That's
that's
what
right.
I'm talking about, is that sometimes you get this sense that God's calling you to something, but there's a time of preparation. There's
Yes.
a time of getting you ready to take the step. And
That's
you
right.
don't always know that you need to be made ready,
Yeah, that's
but
right.
God knows you do.
Yes.
And that there can be a time gap between when God calls you to taking those first steps. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that and how that worked in your lives?
I actually found the letter in my files that I wrote January the 31st, 1978. That the first letter I sent to the Assemblies of God World Missions to ask them would they consider sending us or working with us to go to Ireland. And my reply came February the 15th, which was quite good. 2 weeks later, Ron Wasco saying there was no plans to open Ireland. But they sensed something in my letter. So would I be willing to fill out an application? There's no obligation on my part or their part. So, yeah, I'll make an application. And then, of course, we went up to meet with them. They said there's other places, the South Sea Islands. And would I consider that? And I've often thought in the midst of February, I wished I'd went to South Sea. No. Anyway,
Warmer.
yeah, a warmer climate. So actually, we weren't even approved nearly to the end of that year. And then we resigned our church. And in January of 1980, we began to go raise funds.
No, 1979.
79. We began to raise funds. But we also did a orientation the whole of one summer, 9 weeks for preparation, plus other activities. So it was actually May the 9th, 1980, basically, what would that be, 17 months later. And I think sometimes somebody watches a video like this and thinks, oh, that was great, all that stuff happened. But it was a long time. And then the first year, 2, 3, 4 years, just trying to understand the culture. And St. Mark's, what became St. Mark's actually, even as Embroic was staged, was not till the end of December 1985. So we're talking about 7.5 years before we actually begin to see something come to pass that we dreamed.
And throughout that period,
God's working.
God's working. You're praying.
We're trying to understand the Irish culture.
Yeah.
Trying to
I'm
connect.
sure you're still
we've got
trying
it down.
that. Yeah.
We've got it down now. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure I understand the Irish culture myself
pigs
yet.
fly too.
Yes.
But anyway, yeah. So, and it was all of it. God didn't waste.
Yeah.
There's a book, maybe not a book. There's a statement: "Don't waste the wait."
Yes.
So we're
Yes.
waiting, but we're not going to waste it.
Yeah. And I think I've thought about that often, about my impatience to see things happen. Once I get an idea, I become impatient to see it happen. But God's not impatient. There's a timing in God that if you get it right, it will take you on a wave. And I can't remember who wrote that in the beginning of a book. There's a tide in the affairs of men which, taken at the flood, will lead on to greater things, or whatever. I'm misquoting it now, I know. I think it was Shakespeare. But, and so I think Steinbeck quoted it in one of his books, but there is that sense that you can have the call, but there's a time when God's ready to move. And God calls you and gets you ready, but you need to be in sync with him and moving when he's ready to be, and not to be impatient to push that too hard, but not to lag behind either.
Well, you got to stay the course. I know Hybels, in his book Courageous Leadership, which is a fine book, he tells of an old friend of his dying, and they were both sailing. They both loved sailing, and he gave him a compass, and on it says, "Stay the course." And you know, I think of so many that didn't stay and had effective ministries for a time, got discouraged. And I can remember one especially that said, "I should have never left," but they got discouraged and quit. And that's the reason the book I'm writing is called "It's Always Too Soon to Quit." Because I think when God's blessing come, he sees who has stayed the course, and he puts his hand on them. And when we think about the group that we had, there was a group of us together for over 20 years. We stayed the course, and we argued and prayed and loved, and then when the blessing come, we were there to receive it.
Throughout your ministry in Ireland and beyond Ireland, here in Oklahoma before then and then since then as well, you've been associated with the World Missions Department of the Assemblies of God. How did that relationship work in terms of the direction that they were able to give you, but also the support they gave you? And the reason I'm asking the question is to try to tease out an understanding, or let us get an understanding of the importance of authority structures.
Yes.
And but not authority is obviously a place for authority, but they can also be very supportive and encouraging. So and then the way that you did, or we can relate to those in authority over us. Authority is a God-given thing. I think we should take it seriously. So can you talk to us about that a little bit? Your relationship with AG, World Missions, the support and the authority structures, maybe some of the safeguards they put in place, and also how should we relate to those in authority over us?
Well, it's not restrictive, and I think it's like banks of a wide river, but it does keep some. If you don't have any banks, you have a swamp, so nothing lives really. So I think it's like the banks of a mighty river, and we're there, but it gives some guidance and direction. They give us a great deal of autonomy in what we do locally, where we're called. So what happens in Oklahoma, or what happens in the United States, we have districts or networks. We have a network here in Oklahoma. I made application to Springfield, to AGWM. They approved the application. It took months and months, process, resumes, references, whatever. And then Oklahoma agrees to fund me. And so I'm in that spot now where I agree. And so then we release people to go among our churches, and our churches are well schooled in this. And so then they make commitments financially say for the next 4 years, by faith, we will support you. It's all faith. It's all faith-based. And so they stand with you. And that's been one of the real blessings. And there's also that accountability. I'm accountable for all the funds. And I have to, so there's that accountability within that, which I appreciate and I think needs to be there. And, but that financial provision was huge for us because we've all known missionaries that come there that didn't have the finance and didn't make it, or we ended up supporting them locally, which I don't agree with because I think they ought to get their support and come in because I think support locally needs to go to our local leaders to help them. They don't have access to this network I have. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes,
And they don't have access. And so that always now, our churches in Ireland are very missional. And I know St. Mark's, you know, we sent out some of the first missionaries from Mark's and so on in our network. So there's that accountability. And we would meet regularly. They ask you to come home every 4 years. We go to an extensive school of missions, just kind of fine tuning where we're at. You meet. And then we have a structure in Europe where we have an area director that oversees pastoral care, cares for us. And if there's issues we have, we contact him. But then now today, I'm in that other role where I'm supporting missionaries. So, for instance, one of our missionaries became very ill recently. I contacted him. What do we need to do? We will fly you back, whatever. He said, no, I trust the medical here. And so he's got that support. One of my missionaries had to leave a country because, and I said, what do we need to do? If I need some help financially, so we will help them. Yeah. So it works, but I also expect them to be accountable to me.
Yes.
What are you doing? What's going on?
And I think if we consider those same principles, then in an Irish setting where somebody might want to go into ministry,
Yes.
And certainly now with CCI,
Yes.
there's a support structure there that can assist them and help them. May not completely fund them and underwrite them, but can help them in all sorts of ways. Help them with training, with preparation, with mentoring, and with accountability. There are some great facilities in place, and help to teach them how to raise funds and how to prepare. But again, those things are in place to help and support, and are a valuable assistance to anybody who wants to come into ministry. So I think if you come in with the sense that they're there to help you and support you, that's really, really good. So work with them.
Yes.
Work with them and let them work with you.
Well, that's what's happening right here, isn't it? This church, North Church, is partnering with us in Ireland.
Yes.
Has sent teams over, will be sending teams over and help. So, and it's because of my relationship with them. They trust it. So they partner with us, and then they obviously make their facility available. And it also gives them opportunity to fulfill God's call to go to the world with the gospel. And they also know they can say to their people, this is where we're investing. This is what's happening.
I think no matter what support structures you had in place, or any of us might have in place, making that move from the time God has called you to something into actually taking the step. Let's say you've gone through all the preparation time. God has prepared you. And you sense the timing is right now to take that step. That's still a big step. And I can imagine you're getting on that plane and you know that you're leaving family, or that you're leaving what you had, that you're leaving your place of comfort. In your case, it was leaving family, leaving the United States, coming over to a new country. That was a big step. How did you know the time was right to actually take the move, to take that step, to book the plane tickets?
Everything had fallen in place. The support was there. The burden, now we were going to pursue the vision.
Yes.
Everything was in place. Affirmation locally, affirmation from Ireland.
Yes.
So we just knew that's what. Now, it cost us.
Right.
There was a sacrifice involved.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's not just Christians that make sacrifices. I met a man in Ireland that his brother lived in Chicago, and he left 50 years. He left, this was many years ago, but he had left 50 years before. So everybody makes sacrifices.
Yes.
So it's not just, sometimes we say, hey, we Christians are the one. And he would never see his brother again. He knew that. His brother left, but was an immigrant because he just couldn't make it in Ireland. And I said, so will you ever see him? Well, hopefully. Well, of course he wouldn't.
Yeah.
He's never going to see him. So everybody makes sacrifices to some degree. But yeah, it was difficult. And the hardest thing, what's the hardest thing? What's the hardest thing about being over there? What was the hardest?
When the children become of age to go to college,
Yes.
they want to come back and go to college in America.
Yeah. So
That's the
so
tough.
you're going to be separated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the tough, and you don't know how they're going to cope.
Yeah.
You know, if they're not going to be around family, maybe, and
Yeah.
that's a tough one.
How did that all work out?
Not so good.
Right. It was a tough time.
It was a tough time,
Yeah.
but the Lord has redeemed it. I mean, sometimes I thought my heart would break, you know, so far away, and you have a child that has embraced the Irish culture, and she's there 4 years, and then she comes back, and she doesn't fit in America.
Okay.
So she's like a fish out of water. She's
Okay.
floundering, and it didn't go so well for a few years, but thank God she's come through it.
Yeah.
Well, we heard her share the other day
Yeah.
that her daddy always showed up. And
Yeah.
that's the one thing, great respect for AGWM. They're really about family.
Right.
And I remember calling, whenever Christian nearly died, I called my director, European director, Jerry Parser, still a great friend. He's retired. And he found I couldn't get him. And of course, I just flew over anyway. And he finds out, he calls me, he said, I want to pray with you. What do you need? He said, do you have the finance? Exactly what I say today.
Yes.
And then he said, I want to pray with you. He said, know this, there's no calendar on the wall. Ever how long you have to stay, you stay.
Wow.
And rightfully so.
Yes.
But sometimes groups don't do it. I've seen
Okay.
groups not do
Yeah.
it. But I remember when we left Dana, that was a tough one because she was our baby, and we knew she was in a good place, but you never know what's going to happen. And so I remember saying to Wilma on the plane, because we would get on the plane and we wouldn't really talk to each other.
Okay.
It was too painful.
Okay.
And I remember saying to her, she was looking out the window, and I thought, you know me, I can't stand dead air. And I'm thinking I got to say something. And I said, I promise you, you won't go 6 months without seeing her. And she turns and looks at me, nearly threatening, and says, and I'm going to hold you to that, Gary.
It didn't happen every time, but
Yeah, that was the painful side. But what's great for us is our 3 biological children, and obviously we have an Irish daughter, Mary, and Irish granddaughter, Abigail. Our 3 biological children love Ireland. I mean, you see them.
Yeah.
And they're just up to you,
Yeah.
and you're talking and chatting, and your family and so on. They love Ireland, and their kids, because we always, when the grandchildren graduate from high school, we always send them to Ireland.
Okay.
That's their trip,
Yeah.
or take them. And so already our youngest grandson is already saying, well, okay, I get to go to Ireland. Well, sure he's going.
So there's a whole new
Yeah.
cohort of Irish people growing up in the States who will probably come and bless us in some time to come in various ways.
Yeah, God is no debtor to any person.
Yeah.
And so God, and of course, the great thing happened to us, we connected with my mother's family.
Yes.
And my uncle became one of my best friends. He mentored me in ways I mentored him spiritually, and got to give the eulogy at his service. So God has honored us. And if we had it all do over again,
How could you not do it? I don't know how many times I've had people say to me, if you hadn't come to Ireland, and I can never tell this without crying, we would have never known Jesus.
Yeah.
And I had to say, well, maybe somebody would have gone, but don't know. Maybe they wouldn't have.
Well, maybe not. And I think that's one of the key things. It's clear from what Jesus told us that the harvest is plentiful and the laborers are few, and that we pray that God will send laborers in. And if the laborer who's called doesn't take up that job, the laborers are still few.
Yes.
So there aren't enough laborers to go around.
I pray for my sister who her and her husband pastored the same church for 54 years. She challenged me about it. She said, I pray for my children and grandchildren to be in ministry.
Yes.
So my prayer is that there'll be laborers in the harvest field. And I pray, Lord, whatever that looks like, maybe it will be behind a camera,
Yes.
or maybe it, be some other area.
Yeah.
That there'll be a deacon in the church, or
Yeah.
a Sunday school teacher, or whatever harvest field the Lord calls them to, they'll be obedient to that.
And all those calls are valid and
They're
real.
all very
important.
Absolutely.
They're very
Absolutely.
important. They're
Yeah.
just as important as
Yeah.
the pastor.
Yeah. Well, with that, we're going to finish up on this session. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being with us. We're going to have some more sessions. Our next session will be about team building. And then after that, we'll be looking at building community and outreach. And there'll be other things we'll be talking about as well after that. So Gary and Wilma, thanks so much for giving your time to me, but to all of us. And God bless you, and we'll see you in the next session.
Look forward to it.
Thank you.